This episode of The Clear Out was recorded on the 1st of May 2024 at home in Wicklow. And it is an episode about care, primarily. That's the main point of discussion in this episode that I get to eventually. But I talk a little bit more about a follow-up event to the brutal murder of two of our chickens last week. I talk about slowing the world down and using different mindfulness approaches to help us do that in a way to slow time down, to just pause the clock and in a way cheat back a little bit of time for ourselves, which helps calm us down, helps with our anxiety and things like that. And yeah, I talk about care. I talk about care and what does care look like and what do we care enough about to do something about? Who do we care about? What does that look like? I also talk about a very nice lunch. Oh man, food, social media, whatever. Anyway, I talk about a very nice lunch at the weekend that I had with my wife and daughter, and my daughter's fluctuating mood. And then I realised that one of the reasons my daughter was cranky was because of being up late watching a movie that we had watched the previous night. I talk about some of the not so nice gender attitudes in that movie. I talk about a follow-up movie we watched after that and my daughter's response to that. So a little bit of stuff about gender politics, culture wars, that kind of thing. So that's in the mix as well. So a few sort of movie references apart from that. Talking about, my belief that movies shouldn't be reflecting back our morality. Movies and art making is not meant to be moral. And I talk about a couple of movies in that context, which, for different reasons are provocative. So you can see what you think, see if you agree with me or not. And one other thing, I do mention it at the end of the episode, but I'm happy to mention it here at the start. My website is finally back up and running. It's relaunched. So go and check out the new revamped, fresh and shiny website, theclearout.com. And there you can get all the podcast episodes. You can also get the entire archive, archive of the blog, theclearout.com, that started this whole thing in 2013. So please do go and investigate that. There'll be a link to the website wherever you're listening to this. Okay, cool. I'll see you around the corner. Cheers.
Ooh, not gonna change my mind, leaving the dream behind, keep my emoji inside.
Hi, my name is Dara Clear and you're listening to The Clear Out. You're very welcome. I hope you're well. I hope you're in good form. I hope you're keeping your head above water and keeping the wolves from the door. In my case, I'm trying to keep the foxes from the door. There was a follow-up to last week. If you listen to last week's episode, you'll remember me talking about the demise of two of our 5 chickens, Charlotte and Bobo, who were sisters and who were the mothers of the 3 other chickens that we have. Uno, the obnoxious rooster, who was sired by his obnoxious father, Edwina, now also deceased, and Bob Ross and Bluey are the other 2. And there were many others, but they found homes elsewhere. Anyway, that I recorded last week's episode last Tuesday, and I told you about the foxes, I told you about my daughter having a tear and then being fine, and that was fine. And that was, a little story, a little bit of drama here at #blessed. Did I also mention that we thought that our older cat was dying that morning? I can't remember if I spoke about that. She ended up being taken to the vet, and yes, she's okay. She's okay in the way a very elderly being with dementia is okay. They behave erratically and need a lot of minding. But Marlon, the cat, she will be turning 22 in about 12 days time, 11 days time. I mean, that's a serious age for a cat. Anyway, she didn't die, so that was good. But back to the chickens. So that evening, it was a nice evening, sun was shining, and Maeve, my daughter, persuaded me to play a little bit of cricket in the garden, as is our wont. It was our first little game of cricket, or was it our second? It doesn't matter. Anyway, we're playing a bit of cricket in the garden, having a laugh. And it's basically someone's bowling, someone's batting. That's it. You know, it's pretty straightforward version of the game. I'm forever trying to remind my daughter of the rules, and it's good fun. It's good fun. But at a certain point, she was getting increasingly cranky, and to the point of like, here, I can't be playing with you. You're too angry and upset, and I'm not sure what the hell is going on. But of course, it was about the chickens. So she just, I never got down to her level, and she dissolved in tears and really expressed her sadness about the two girls being taken, and was lamenting the fact that the rooster hadn't been taken instead. And that was, but that was good. It was necessary. It was, it was cathartic just to get it out, and, we moved on. Anyway, a little bit later on, she was in watching a show before bed with her mother, and I was sitting in the other room, which looks out on the garden, watching a bit of football. And the next thing, I heard a commotion in the garden, and I heard the 3 remaining chickens flapping and squawking and carrying on, and one of them took flight. Our chickens can fly. They can fly quite well. And I jumped up and I looked out, and there was a huge fox in the garden, and that fox had obviously just tried to get the other chickens, and as far as I'm concerned, it must have been the same fox coming back for seconds, coming back to finish the job. And I say huge, I mean a fully grown, mature fox that was, like from nose to tail, easily 5 foot, I would say. And, just a good, solid size. Now, I'm well disposed towards foxes. I like them. But I had to run that guy out of the garden, and he jumped up into the bushes at the edge of the garden, and I could see him just waiting. He was kind of looking back at me to see what's going to happen now. And I thought, really? You're just going to hang there and just see if you can just kind of sneak back in and get the chickens? So I fired a rock as hard as I could, and it cracked off the wall that the fox was standing on, and off he scarpered. And then we tried to get the chickens. There 2 of them hadn't flown off, and we managed to get them into little hen houses, and the other one was high up in a tree on our driveway and stayed there overnight. Now, I went out later that night and went out with a torch and looked up into the back field, and I saw 2 eyes in the middle distance peeping at me in the darkness, low to the ground, and I saw the torch and just scarpered, and I reckon that was the fox. The next morning I came out, and beside, we had like a hutch and a hen house, and the rooster went in the hen house and Bluey went into the hutch, all safely sealed up. Now I went out, the chickens were still alive, but I noticed beside the hutch there was an upturned flower pot. This is on the grass in the garden. Underneath that flower pot was a dead shrew wrapped in paper that my daughter had put there as a little mausoleum, or maybe a mouse-oleum. And that flower pot had been knocked over and the tissue had been pulled apart. Now the shrew was still in there. So I reckon the fox came back and had a little snifter around and poked around and knocked over the pot. Now, that's it. That's the end of the story. There's been no drama since, no carnage, and all is well in the land of the farmyard animals, the fowl. And I am looking at those chickens differently. I do have a sense, or I'm projecting a sense of their loss. And I'm feeling a little bit more kindly towards them. Even the rooster, who, again, I can't remember if it was last week or the previous week, I'd mentioned that I had to crack across the head because he attacked me. And I thought I'd killed him. It's not great, is it? But look, it is what it is. It is what it is. Listen, if the rooster was looking after me, I'm sure I'd be getting the crap kicked out of me on a regular basis, because that's what roosters do. They're so aggressive. Anyway, there you go. So here we are, another week down. It's the 1st of May. And what the hell is going on with how fast time is moving. I'm just convinced the older I get, the faster time goes. I have heard someone put out the theory that the less time you have left, the faster it goes. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't know. I think a lot of it is perception. It's not a bad exercise. It's not a bad sort of mindfulness exercise to consciously try and slow down. And even as I say that, my impulse is to speak more slowly, to be calmer, to be more meditative, reflective. And I could probably easily just drift off. It wouldn't make for a very interesting podcast, though. And you're saying, well, what's the change? But no, great. Like, that's a really good exercise, just to try and, settle yourself, calm down, sit down, lie down, and really try to. It's completely artificial, but your attempt is, can I just slow time down? And even if that's as literal as visualizing a clock, not a digital one, although maybe it could be. I prefer to think of an analog clock with a moving hand, the mechanisms, the cogs, and just picture that second hand and refuse it permission to move to the next second until you're ready. And allow your own breathing, your own internal rhythm to just settle down to that tempo, that pace, and be there in that moment and enjoy the stillness, enjoy the quiet, enjoy just being in that moment, trying to be present. I mean, that really is, that's doable, that's achievable, but it requires just a little bit of mental effort. It requires a little bit of tuning into the system. It requires slowing down the breath. But they are all really conducive to calmness, to clarity of thought, clarity of emotion. And as I've said before, when you have clarity of thought and clarity of emotion, what follows, if you choose, is clarity of expression. And I wouldn't do this podcast if I didn't believe in the value of expressing what's inside. I mean, that was a huge part of my teaching approach when I was teaching as well. And when I started writing the blog, that was the sort of birthplace of the podcast. That was really the driving motivation as well. This idea of expressing what needs to be expressed, what needs to come out. I'm not saying for all of you. Just for me. just for me. I'm just expressing it for myself. And then, if it happens to be something that's digestible, palatable, diverting, interesting, stimulating, whatever, entertaining for other people, all the better. That's just a byproduct. It's a bonus. But this weekly ritual of mine to sit down here at this microphone in this space and say words, speak language, and attempt to thread the needle. And that needle is weaving thoughts and impulses and reflections and perceptions, observations. It's weaving them together, trying to pull together something cohesive, something coherent, and hopefully of value, not just to myself. I mean, joking aside, of course I want this to be heard. I want it to be of use to others, because otherwise, why bother put it out into the public domain? So anyway, here we are. It is May, whether I like it or not. I kind of like it. I kind of like it because the sun is shining today. I went to the sea twice in the last 2 days and turned back because the conditions were too rough, and my conditions weren't up to the challenge of getting into that water. Particularly rough on Monday, and I was wrecked. And then yesterday I went to the sea again. It was less rough, still bad enough, and very dirty looking. And I just thought, no, my neck was a little bit out of sorts, and again, very weary. And I just thought, no, it's okay. I don't need to do this today. So that's going to affect my tally for April. So if you're not familiar with this, another one of my sort of it veers into OCD territory. I don't think I have OCD at all, but I am a recorder. I record things in journals, in diaries. I have done since I was very young. I stopped briefly for a while in my early 20s. I lost faith in that, and then I returned to it. So, I when I reflect on 30 odd years more, 35 years of writing in diaries and journals, honestly, there's not a lot there that I go, this is good stuff. This needs to be kept for posterity. Occasionally, I've managed to access, I think, as I would perceive it, thoughts and experiences. I've managed to capture them with some level of substance and successful articulation. But often I'm just kind of jotting down, things that happened, movies I've seen, all that sort of stuff. But yes, further to the tally, the April tally, I record every bit of exercise I do, and it motivates me because I see I've done less or I've done more, and I have a sense of what I consider an acceptable amount of exercise over a month, over a week, over a fortnight, and I think, it fits with my routine, my regime. It all contributes to my mental health, my kind of mental health maintenance. Obviously, it contributes to my physical maintenance. I've never been someone who wanted to spend time in a gym in front of mirrors trying to perfect a body. That was never the objective. It's it's the doing of it. It's what it does for my brain, what it does for me emotionally, psychologically, And yeah, sure, of course, it's nice to go, I've reached this age and I'm in reasonable shape. I can still run a bit, and there's a reasonable amount of strength. Now, okay, I'm 50, I'm not 90, but believe you me, sitting here now, if I'm still alive at 90, I hope I'll still be active. Not to the level I am now, but that would be my aspiration, to still be using this body, using these lungs. Yeah, who knows? But yeah, I'd record, for example, how many times I swam, how many times I've walked, how many games of football I've played, how many times I've practiced my morning routine, which is usually a qigong sequence, maybe some conditioning, teaching a bit of karate, etc. All of that, it all goes in. And yeah, I had been hoping to throw a couple of more swims into the April tally, and it was not to be. Anyway, it's a new day, and I was up the mountain early with Pepper, the dog, this morning, which was fine. As I was driving up, my fuel light in the car had come on yesterday, and I was like, be fine, I'm not too worried. But as I reached the kind of setting off point for the walk this morning, my car was telling me I only had 10 kilometers worth of fuel left. That would be 6 miles in the old money, in the imperial system. And I was thinking, geez, that's not good. I hope I don't run out of fuel on my way home and get stranded. And I have to go to Dublin later today, so I need to get fuel before I go. Now, obviously, I'm back here at the mic, so no drama. But I was like, oh man, really? I've never let it get this low. And then I went on the walk, and there was like zero visibility on the walk, enough to follow the path up to the top. But yeah, just a heavy fog. So there was no view to be taken in. And it was a sort of, it was cold and damp with the fog. And grand. Back down to the car, and off we went. And I was thinking, and I'd already been thinking, well, if I have to basically cut the engine and roll at, several parts of the journey on the way home, that'll be a way to save fuel. But as I was driving back down, my 10 kilometers worth of fuel suddenly became 20, and then it became 30, and then it became 40. And by the time I came home, it was telling me I had 50 kilometers of fuel left. And I was like, this is brilliant. What a turnaround. And it's hilarious. It's hilarious how much it cheered me to see that number going up and up and up. And I was going, nice. And obviously it's just to do with the angle of the car and the fuel tank and where the fuel sort of sits. But nonetheless, I was very worried at 10 kilometers. And now I'm like, 50 kilometers. I could get pretty close to Dublin on 50 kilometers worth of fuel. But I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? It's just nice. It's just nice when those things happen and your fears can be allayed as they were. And it's like, okay, my the universe is going, it's all right there. It's all right there, pet. Relax. You're grand. You've got plenty of diesel in your car. You'll get home. Not a bother on you. But interestingly, speaking of, maybe not interestingly at all, coincidentally, speaking of energy shortages or fuel shortages, there's a scheduled power outage today. Some work has been done. So, I was kind of quickly trying to make use of all the electrics in the house before I sat down to record this. So this has been recorded on battery power on my laptop. And again, that's another, just to throw it back to the mindfulness idea before, like that's another very effective visualization to, again, slow things down and to try and de-stimulate. Because, again, being consistent in my messages, in my messaging, and my resistance and critical view of the kind of the tech age and the internet age and the social media age, and that incessant noise, that incessant distraction and aggravation, which I think does so much damage to so many of us in terms of how it gets in our head and, you know, stimulates us in ways that fundamentally are not healthy. So again, a very effective sort of visualization is simply to sit yourself down and just picture yourself, you know, in whatever place, you know, it is that feels right to you, and just picture yourself going around, switching everything off, plugging everything out, and just coming back to a place of natural light and natural energy and stillness, with no fear of interruption, no fear of distraction, and just enjoy that, and just enjoy being able to hear naturally occurring sounds. Like as I sit here now, I can hear just a little bit of wind outside. I can hear the wind rustling the leaves, and it's kind of beautiful. So that's, I'm not obsessing or fixating on, let me tell you, lots of different ways to achieve mindfulness or calm down or keep anxiety at bay. But they are good things to do. And I think, just to sort of try and segue to something I wanted to speak about today, you know, if we put this into the context of care, and sure, we can talk about self-care, but I think often, and certainly I'm guilty of this, we can kind of mosey along through life, through our days, and, you know, be aware of things aren't great, or I'm not in great form, or things are challenging, or I'm a bit rattled, or, you know, my head's not right, my emotional state is, you know, not right. And I think we go, I'll come out of this, it'll be fine, my more resilient or positive self will return in due course. And I think we can be quite passive. We can be quite passive and allow ourselves to be buffeted about by inclement weather, you know, emotionally speaking, psychologically speaking, just the circumstances of life. And, you know, maybe that's a sort of a heuristic model, you know, based on our sort of experience, based on, you know, the knowledge that we've acquired over time, and we can make calculations or assumptions in that heuristic way to go, no, this will be fine, because I know I've seen this pattern before, and this is the most likely outcome. And I think there's truth in that, but I also think there's great benefits to go, no, I'm actually going to be more interventionist here, you know, on my own behalf. And I'm going to prioritize an active changing of the pattern. Because what have I got to lose? And sometimes just contemplating that kind of effort is its own deterrent. You go, do I have to learn something new? Do I have to change, you know, my normal rhythm? And if the normal rhythm, as I'm suggesting, is one of passivity, and I'm not using passivity in a critical way. I just think it's a very natural mode. We just kind of stumble along with assumptions that things will work out. I have a lot of that in me. I have a lot of that in my personality. In spite of the various things I do in other areas of my life. This comes back to what I was talking about last week with the idea of habitual thinking. Habitual thinking can be very cozy with complacency, and that's something I don't approve of, and I do view complacency negatively, because complacency to me is the absence of care, and that's really what I wanted to talk about today, is the idea of care. And so if you come back to this idea of, I will try a little mindfulness exercise, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that's it. I don't need any more time than that. I can quickly access that headspace. I can slow my heart rate just by the things I'm thinking about. I can breathe, slow my breathing, which contributes to that slowing down of the heart rate as well, and hopefully help certain emotions or energy states that are challenging me. I can hopefully calm them down, or somewhat reverse them, or dampen them down, without the use of medication. For example, not that there's anything wrong with medication if that's what's necessary to keep your brain balance right. And how I'd think about it, how I'd think about that decision-making process is, what do you care enough about to do? Is that a very awkward phrasing? Do I care enough to take action? Do I care enough about this thing to take action? And I think as a point of discussion for wellness in general, I think that's an excellent starting point. What do I care enough about to take action? Because, and you could take out what and put in who. Who do I care enough about to take action? Yeah? I don't know. Do you want to take that to its natural conclusion and go, where do I care enough about? Why do I care enough about? Why don't I care enough about? How do I care enough about? So I think the what, the who, and the how are interesting in terms of being practical, because you work out what you care about and you work out who you care about, and then the action part is connected to the how. So how do I care about this? In what way do I care? How do I demonstrate my care? Am I demonstrating my care? And I would suspect that many of us struggle to demonstrate care, either for ourselves or for others. And that, again, can fall into lots of different sort of dynamics, or patterns, or beliefs, connected to fear, connected to insecurity, connected to worthiness, connected to self-worth, connected to lots of different things. Why you wouldn't demonstrate care. And sometimes it's because it's an overextension of yourself, something that takes you out of your comfort zone. It might be that fear of rejection, because there's a fear that it won't be reciprocated, or the rejection might take the form of simply being misunderstood, or received indifferently, or even being received in a way that makes it clear that it's unwelcome, which of course can be directed at oneself as well. You might reject the thing you're trying to implement and go, no, this isn't me, this isn't right for me, why am I doing this? It might bring up self-consciousness, and create tension and stress, in as a response to that. But again, I come back to and maybe this is a circular thing, clarity of thought and clarity of emotion. And so how do you achieve clarity of thought and clarity of emotion? Well, one way is to engage with mindfulness practices. One way is to try and slow oneself down, to be still, to be observant, to be the witness to oneself, to try and be outside of oneself and to observe oneself with compassion, with non-judgment, and in the interest of minding oneself and guiding oneself. I think I've spoken about this belief before. My belief that within us, that there's a benign understanding, a benign witness, a benign knowledge that is aware of every thought we've ever had, every feeling we've ever had, every impulse we've ever had, everything we've ever done, and it's seen it all, and it's not judging us. It's just been present with us the entire time and knows us better than we often give ourselves permission to know ourselves, because I think we are exceptional at avoiding ourselves. Exceptional at sensing, I don't want to go there. I don't want to look at that space. I don't want to look at that wound. I don't want to look at that belief system. I don't want to look at that negativity. I don't want to look at that pathology. Because it's scary territory. It's confronting. And of course, by opening ourselves to it, it opens up a dialogue within. And it opens up this dialogue of, well, now that I've seen this is how I am, do I care enough about myself to act differently? Do I care enough about myself to change the paradigm, to change the pattern, to change the rhetoric, to change the narrative? I can't answer that for you. Only you can answer that for you. But I continue to believe that there's great benefits to facing those fears and to facing oneself and to demonstrating care for oneself in that regard. And it's the same externally, isn't it? How do you show your care for others? And what does that look like? And are you willing, or can you accept that maybe your care, the care you extend, won't be reciprocated? Maybe it won't be valued in the way you value it. And can you still give it without the expectation of reciprocation? That's a sort of an altruistic model, or one that is more selfless. And I guess a lot of parental love and care, nurturing falls into that category. Certainly how I try to demonstrate my care for my daughter is not predicated on reciprocation. I'm not doing it because I want that back to me. Sure, I'm doing it because I can't kind of help myself because that's love. But sure, I want a result. The result I want is to have a happy child, someone who is secure in themselves and trusts that I'm a safe, loving parent, and that the benefits will come after that. And mostly so far, that seems to be going quite well. Most of the time. Oh man, but my my daughter's funny. She's funny. She's fiery. She's hot, and is unafraid to express her anger, her disapproval, her disdain. We went out for lunch at the weekend, the three of us, and it was, my wife and I celebrated our 21st wedding anniversary last week, and so we waited till the weekend and we travelled across to the other side of Wicklow, West Wicklow, it's just a different county. It's a different county geographically. It changes, the topography changes, and it's a little bit more like its neighbour Kildare, not as hilly. And what I have never spent a lot of time in West Wicklow. It's that kind of the other side of the mountains. The accent is different. It's just, I find all that stuff fascinating. It's a lot more agricultural. It feels less wealthy. Just to kind of scan about and take note of houses and properties and things. But that said, we went to this place, and I just thought, wow, this place, it's so kind of emblematic of New Ireland. It's so emblematic of an Ireland that just did not exist when I was a kid. And basically, it was this lovely restaurant over in Grange Con in West Wicklow, and it's they have like a bricks and mortar building, which I think is where their kitchen is, and I think they have a little display of cakes and whatnot in there. But the main restaurant is inside a yurt outside. Yes, a yurt. That's yogurt without the OG. Without the H as well, now that I think about it. A yurt, it's just, it's a huge tent. It's a huge outdoor tent, as opposed to an indoor tent. Indoor tents are what my daughter loves when she sets up camp in her bedroom. Asks, can I take a couple of chairs from the kitchen? Can I take, 3 blankets? It's like, okay, yeah. But yeah, a yurt, and, indoor heaters, and it was really busy. And when we got there, my daughter just had a face like thunder, and she's just like so unbelievably grumpy. And my wife was ready to kill her, and I was like, if you're a parent, you'll be familiar with this dynamic. If one parent is like in a rage, or is showing signs that they could be in a rage, it just takes the pressure off the other parent. So I was able to be all chilled and, hey, what's wrong? Come on, we're gonna have fun here. We'll get something yummy to eat. It's gonna be really nice. And my wife was like, I'm gonna have to take you outside and speak to you. Sorry. Anyway, she came round, and it was fine, and the food was excellent. It was really, really good. Just a lovely little lunch, and I was just fascinated looking around at kind of a diverse enough crowd of people, not in terms of skin colour, but I heard some non-Irish accents. There were young, healthy looking, very happy young Irish people. There was an older man who was finishing his lunch when we arrived, and he was showing signs of some sort of accident. He had a bruise on his face, and as it happened, my wife got talking to him afterwards, and he did say that he'd had a fall and had to wait for neighbours to find him. It was quite a sad little story, but he was a very nice guy. People of all ages in there, and a really nice, tasty menu. And it just, to me, it just was like, this is New Ireland. This is like an award-winning restaurant with a really nice menu, beautiful fresh food, and just a very buzzy little clientele coming in and out. People are familiar with it. I just thought it was great. It was really nice. I just quite unexpected. So that was absolutely absolutely fantastic. And yeah, one of the reasons I reckon as it happened, my daughter got really cranky with me later on. I was trying to get a photograph of herself and myself, trying to get a photograph of her and my wife, and she just was like, "No, I'm not gonna smile for this camera." And I got really cranky with me because I was getting cranky with her. And then it passed, and then she was in great form again. And then she got the front seat to drive home, so she liked that. She doesn't like going in the car. So every time we get in the car, how long is this trip going to be? Oh man. Anyway, I know one of the reasons she was cranky was because she'd been up late the previous night, and we watched. Can you believe? And this is my fault. I take full responsibility. We watched the Jim Carrey movie Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. And I hadn't watched it probably since it came out. I think it was mid-90s. Was it 94? He was just about to explode. I don't know if he'd just done The Mask or The Mask came next. I just remember thinking at the time, like, Jim Carrey is just one of the funniest people in the world. And like his particular bag of tricks, the kind of elastic face, the physical comedy, the over-the-topness, it just doesn't age well. And I mean, I've known that for years. And he did more interesting things like Man on the Moon, even the Truman Show, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind comes to mind as well. I find it quite an interesting character. And if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check out. There's a documentary about his whole process when he was making Man in the Moon, and how he really went deep into kind of sort of a method process and immersed himself in his characterization of, oh man, I'm going to forget that guy's name. The actor who was in Taxi, the series, who was the central figure of Man in the Moon. Why am I going blank on his name? Sort of a kind of a gonzo comedian, anarchic, breaking all the rules. He also had an alter ego, which was a sort of an Elvis impersonator. Jim and Andy Kaufman, that's it. That documentary is amazing, really fascinating, and takes you deep inside Jim Carrey's brain and his own sort of ego, his own wrestle with his artistic self, his public persona, because he really was one of the biggest performers / stars in the world at that time. But the documentary, it's a trip. Anyway, Ace Ventura, which when I saw it as a 20-year-old, I thought, this is just great stuff. And it's, my daughter was enjoying a lot of the physical comedy, and that was fine. But then you realise, the 90s, they were still very, very comfortable with homophobic gags, homophobic humour. And there's a plot line, a story, part of the, storyline whereby Sean Young, the actress Sean Young, is playing a female police captain. But as the story goes on, we're given to understand that she used to be a man, so she's transitioned. And when the men in her vicinity become aware of this, and the implication is that they have, many of them have kissed her or slept with her, there's visible gagging and choking and dry heaving as the natural straight man's response to finding out he's slept with a man. And yeah, it's like you're watching it going, oh, it just, I'm asking myself, like, Is it funny? Like, from a physical comedy point of view, from a broad humor point of view, you can kind of go, okay, yeah, it's still pretty funny. But the inherent homophobia is really, oh God, no, this isn't good at all. Like, it's, it went completely over, my daughter's head, but I sort of felt, I did actually kind of go, look, there's part of that just isn't nice, because it's, it's making fun of, or, really making a really negative comment about, being gay or transitioning. Now, I didn't give her a big lecture, but like, I just felt, I'm not going to let this just kind of go unaddressed. I didn't make a big deal about it, but yeah, again, it's just, it's cultural change, and it's, sometimes there's a real timestamp on certain movies and on humor. And you go back and watch a lot of 80s movies and 90s movies, and I know this has come up in, cultural criticism around Friends, the series Friends, where there was a lot of, very open, homophobic humor as just part of the general sort of banter between the lads. And yeah, it's just kind of fascinating to go, oh, okay, yeah, we don't really do that anymore, do we? Because people are more educated, people are more sensitive, and to bring it back to my thesis today, because people care. And it's not about clutching your pearls. It's not about being woke. It's not about identity politics. It's just about demonstrating emotionally intelligent evolution, the evolution of emotional intelligence. It's about the demonstration of consideration. And I think as well, obviously in terms of, masculinity, and if the dominant presentation of masculinity in movies kind of forever was very straight, very straight, hetero, heroic masculinity, in terms of the vast majority of protagonists in films and TV, usually pitted against deviant masculinity, in forms of, bad guys, evil antagonists, murderers, sociopaths, but also, that could veer into, deviant sexual identity, deviant gender identity. Think maybe of Silence of the Lambs and the Buffalo Bill character, a great antagonist, but again, you kind of go, okay, what message are we getting here? Like, what message are we receiving? Now, I'd be a great sort of contextualist, always put it into the context of the story. But so for me, like Silence of the Lambs, I don't find problematic, which is the word we generally choose now when we're discussing things that challenge the changed social mores, the changed social norms, the changed gender norms. But like something like Ace Ventura, which is, broad, it's obviously comedic, certain gags, they just don't wash. They just don't land in the same place. And I can go back and look and go, okay, well, how did I receive that when I was, 19, 20? I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. But it didn't make me think, it didn't make me diminish gay men. It didn't make me homophobic. But of course, there's a complicity in enjoying the joke. There's a complicity in being approving of that humor. And I suppose if I think of a movie like Philadelphia, with Tom Hanks as the lawyer who gets AIDS and is, squeezed out, fired from his law practice, and then takes a sort of a lawsuit against his firm to go, it's discrimination, it's homophobic discrimination, and that, it kind of, Philadelphia leans into let's explore what this looks like, being a gay man at a time when it wasn't easy to be a gay man. I mean, surrounded by very straight male colleagues who didn't hold back when voicing their, or giving kind of easy voice to their homophobia, often in the form of jokes, which is, it's a very male thing to do, just to assert your straightness and to assert your bond with other straight men and go, don't worry, you don't have to worry about me, I'm straight. It's very codified behavior, and I suppose if you're not being outwardly critical of that, you can be accused of being complicit and facilitating it by not objecting. So I find all that stuff interesting, really interesting, actually. But I think what at the moment my sense would be like we're living, in a time when that improved or increased sensitivity and consideration, which I think is excellent, and right and fair and decent and moral, in terms of art making, particularly in movies, it's probably kind of leaned too far into, let's be really sensitive and considerate, and make sure we don't offend people with the art that we're making. And I reject that with every fibre of my being, because art doesn't have to be moral. That's not the purpose of art. Let's reflect back your values, or let's bolster your sense of rightness or goodness. That makes for very boring art. I think art should be transgressive. It should be edgy. It should push boundaries. It should, it's art. It's artifice. It's a creation, and as an audience, we can decide whether to watch it or not, whether to take it in or not. We can see how it makes us feel. We can see how it makes us react. You take sort of provocateurs like Gaspar Noé and his really confronting, brutal film Irreversible, and the events that happen in that movie, and that is provocation. That is edgy, and horrifying, actually. But a very, very clever, very clever bit of filmmaking. The other night I was looking at the Triangle. No, it's not there. It's just Triangle of Sadness. The Ruben Östlund film from a couple of years ago that won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. And in I don't know if you've seen that movie. I hadn't seen his other movies. I was aware of them. His other two movies were The Square, which was sort of a satire of the art world, and then the Force Majeure, about a family falling apart after an avalanche near like a hotel resort. Is that right? They remade it in English, but Triangle of Sadness, it just kind of got me immediately with its sense of humor, and fundamentally it's it's a little bit like Mark Mylod's The Menu, which again it's a film about kind of class war. It's a film fundamentally about, let's look at the richest of the rich and give vent to our judgment of them, our hatred of them. let's reduce them to cliches and caricatures and see them get their just desserts. The menu it's only half successful as far as I'm concerned. There's some, great foodie stuff in it, and to a point it works, and then it devolves into something that's just not that interesting at all. Although there are some great stagings in it, with Ralph Fiennes as the chef who's reached the pinnacle, but is completely burnt out with what that all meant. But Triangle of Sadness, it's in very similar territory. Kind of like let's have a look at the rich and see what they can be subjected to and how they might cope. And the central premise is we follow a young couple, both models, one female, one male, and how they end up on a luxurious cruise, part of their influencer booty, and the cruise the cruise comes to a disastrous end, and so several of the members of the rich clients and some of the staff, some of the crew, end up marooned on an island. And so there's a sort of a role reversal. The power order is inverted. And look, I'm not going to really say more than that, because if you haven't seen it, you should watch it for yourself and make up your own mind. I found it very entertaining. It loses a bit of momentum, but the big the big set piece takes place on this amazing yacht, and it's what precedes the ending of the cruise, and it is astonishing. And I thought hilarious in its sort of audacious vulgarity. This is close to body horror, some of the things that were put on screen, but I think to enormously comic effect. And Woody Harrelson has a central role in that sequence as the kind of the derelict, the captain. Well, captain guilty of kind of dereliction of duty, but he's quite entertaining. I think Woody Harrelson's a very underrated actor. I just think he really, he always brings something very good to whatever he does. I think there's a real intelligence in his acting, but there's always humor, there's always warmth. He's very good. You go back and watch early episodes of Cheers when his character was introduced, and how good he was as that Woody in Cheers, and how brilliantly he played the rube, the hick, the dumb guy, butting heads with Sam, and great stuff. Okay, I think that's all I have today. One other thing, one other movie actually, because that was another the moody Saturday with my daughter fluctuating from being in great form to terrible form. It continued that evening. We went home, and after I felt Ace Ventura, no, not too pleased with that. So I said, I know, we'll watch something. My daughter had come across, she must have seen a trailer for Gravity, Alfonso Cuarón's Gravity from 2013, with Sandra Bullock as the scientist who finds herself working on a satellite for NASA high above the Earth. And there's a kind of a disaster that happens, and she has to find a way to get back down to Earth, ultimately by herself. I think it's still an amazing movie. My sense is it's sort of fallen out of favor in some way, or it's not as loved or as appreciated as it was when it came out. I've watched it several times. I used to sometimes show it to students when I was teaching in Melbourne, and it always went down well. It appealed to me. I really wanted my daughter to see it because she likes science fiction, likes space-based movies, amongst other things. But I just thought it's actually such a great female protagonist, like Sandra Bullock. Sandra Bullock is generally, easy company, but I think she's really good in this movie. And if I think, if I think about her role in The Blind Side, for which she won an Oscar, I just don't rate that movie at all. I just think it's just hackneyed, cliched crap. Also, white savior stuff in there as well. Even though it's based on a true story, I think, isn't it? But I just thought this is just not interesting. There's something about, when Hollywood actresses play those, feisty Southern women, it's a bit like, okay, this is just, yeah. I mean, is her performance in Gravity Oscar worthy? I'd give her an Oscar for that before I'd give it to her for The Blind Side. I just think it's great, and it's a really, they're just kind of thematically, there are really strong ideas in Gravity that, when you look at it and you're not just caught up in the excitement and the tension of the story and the action, I think it's a really interesting, if you want to pitch Gravity into the discussion of the culture wars, into the discussion of Battle of the Sexes, gender wars, feminism, whatever wave of feminism we're in now, it is a film that in many ways you could view as a sort of allegory for the rise of the woman in the 21st century. And very interesting, I think, when you observe in an early sequence post-disaster and Sandra Bullock's character is just flailing around and is ultimately rescued by George Clooney's character, who's the most senior astronaut present, and he tethers her to him, and they're moving through space, and it's, I was like, okay, so this is an umbilical cord, and they're tethered together, but it's not like a father. Sorry, it's not like a mother baby umbilical cord. It's like twins, and they're moving through space, and ultimately he has to go, I'm going to cut myself loose because only one of us can survive. And so he makes the, again, conventionally heroic decision to sacrifice himself so she might survive. And ultimately, that is, I mean, look, it's over 10 years since it came out, so I don't think I'm spoiling anything. Ultimately she does triumph. Her own sort of ingenuity, and her own sort of, rebirth into a more heroic mold is achieved, and the final sequence of the movie is her emerging from water. So that's the amniotic fluid, and we see her come to her feet. But the way Cuarón shoots her is to make her look like a behemoth, like Goliath bestriding, Colossus bestriding the world. And with the soundtrack, I can't remember who did the music, I just find it chilling and thrilling, absolutely brilliant. So I was loving it. But my daughter was like, about halfway through, I don't like this movie. Now, I don't think she was I don't think it was lost on her that we had this great kind of female protagonist, overcoming the odds. I think the stress of the movie got to her, because it's a stressful watch. Definitely the first time you see it, it's stressful, it's tense. I think it's brilliant, and I really like it as that idea of feminist allegory, triumph of woman, rise of woman. And I find that stuff interesting. I don't feel challenged by it. I don't feel diminished, and I care about what my daughter sees. And it was funny because when we were scrolling on Netflix on the Friday night, she just observed, said, like, God, why do so many movies have men on the covers? And in a way, that's what made me more convinced that we should watch Gravity the following day, because she was observing, all these different movies, it's men. I thought it was a very interesting observation on her part. Anyway, there you go. Okay, that's it. I'm done. Thank you very much for listening. If you've stayed with me, I hope you found something in today's episode to give you pause for thought, to divert, stimulate, entertain, amuse, consternate, whatever. It's all good. You can throw me some love on social media. I'd love to give a shout out to Trevor, who's become a regular listener. How are you, Trev? He sent me a lovely message last week saying how much he's been enjoying the show, the tell, and I really appreciate it. I love getting an old message like that. Makes me think I'm not completely insane to do this thing. So nice one, Trev. Thanks for sharing the love. It landed in the right place. And if anyone wants to follow Trev's example, you can do so across the various social media platforms, particularly Instagram, I guess, and Facebook. The podcast goes out on YouTube every week, and you can get it wherever you listen to podcasts. And also, if you want to support this show financially, throw a couple of bob at it, you can use the Patreon link. That's patreon.com/theclearout. And for the price of a drink, a sandwich, a coffee, a tea, a couple of bars of chocolate, you can do that. And that's a really nice thing to do, to put your money where your mouth is. So that's it. One final thing. The clearout.com is back up and running. It's had a lot of work done on it by my friend Daniel Kolia Hanau, who, on top of his full-time job and traveling and lots of other things, he's been tipping away quietly, rebuilding the website. We have relaunched earlier this week, so go and check it out. It's got the entire back catalogue of podcast episodes. It also has everything that went up on the blog since 2013 when it started. So there's a whole load of blog posts / think pieces / articles there. Also some short stories, poems. And I think Daniel's done a great job. So thanks, Daniel. Go and check out theclearout.com and see what you think. And that, you can listen to the podcast there. You can link to other places you can find it. You can subscribe. So all of that would be very welcome. Okay, that's it. I'm gone. Take it easy. Have a great week, and I will talk to you next week. All the best. See you. Bye.